Religion as a political ideology, understanding religion as a political tool and the freedom of and from religion. Introduction and inspiration. The best place to start is at the beginning. With that, I find I should share my inspiration to get the visual voyage started in our mind's eye. Now, I will preface this by saying I know that part of being human means containing flaws. My understanding or lack thereof of the entirety of the complex situation or debate does not determine the weight that my points hold. Furthermore, explained by not holding the entire complexity of the religious universe on your back burner when speaking on the flaws within modern institutions doesn't mean that you aren't speaking to some serious concerns. Still, I can see how choosing to boil things down to too simple of a term can cause some alienation. I want to take a look at this critically and see both/all sides of the story. My inspiration for this study was a soundbite of Nawal el-Saadawi saying, "Religion is a political ideology." Further, I found a resource mentioning that Saadawi had observed that religious and political power have been inseparable throughout time, and that she linked religion to capitalism and women's rights. Now, where I personally found that we diverge very shortly after is where Saadawi says that religion is silly and that the more you study religion, the more you see it as ridiculous. Crowcroft, 2018. I want to also preface this by saying it is an opinion and that opinions cannot be inherently wrong or right, but that you can disagree with them, and to that extent, you are more than welcome to disagree with what I say next. I have studied religion, obviously, I would assume nowhere near as extensively, and the more I study, the more I think how connected we really all are. Modern humans are animals coping with the fact that we have been pushed much further into an age that most of us don't understand by a handful of people who do, and in turn, they take advantage of the labor we provide to do things that the average person will never dream of doing. Our use of religion as a coping mechanism has been around for a long time. It just looks different now. And I will get into how I believe religion has absolutely been used as a political tool, but that isn't the beginning of this discussion. The beginning of the discussion starts with recognizing that two things can be true at the same time. Number one, religion has been and is being used as a persecutory tool and has always had close ties to politics. And number two, religion is a way that people get through the day. Going into this reading holding both understandings will get you through a lot easier. I did find another author who talked about the clips of Saadawi who digs into why they believe it is a restrictive statement to place on religion. The author talks about items like the misrepresentation of Islam as completely without feminist movement, the difference between a culture's beliefs versus a religious belief, and not conflating the two, and more, referring to the essay as not a dismissal but a necessary counterbalance. They bring up some important points that I am not knowledgeable about, but the part that struck me was when they said that this overlooks the multifaceted role that faith plays, and to simplify it to that narrow of a critique is to remain disconnected from those under the faith. To engage critically and respectfully is what will open doors and create further engagement without alienation. Dardir, 2025. I want to take the time here to recognize that faith can play an incredible role in many people's lives. Regardless of the negative interactions I have encountered with religion as an institution, I have also seen numerous people move away from a damaging path under the guise, definition, external form, appearance, or manner of presentation, typically concealing the true nature of something of God. What I mean by that is that if you need to believe that it is the guidance of a higher power creating your ability to do good, then that is at your own discretion. Definition, the freedom to decide what should be done in a particular situation. If it takes being told the way to salvation, which I also understand is a dangerous game and we must learn to not blindly follow any one religious leader, for you to be a good person and you've actively chosen to follow that path, I don't see the harm. Whatever the reason, if you are choosing to be a good person, I think that that is an ethical definition conforming to a high standard of morality or virtue decision. Religion as a political tool. While I believe that the people of the congregation are not always inherently complicit, definition, involved with others in an illegal activity or wrongdoing, I do understand that having a group of people trained to blindly follow will lead to oppression, always. It's the difference between the institution and the individual. While an individual is not entirely bound to the blame for the actions of the institution. When they are actively participating for fear of excommunication, definition, the action of officially excluding someone from the participation in the sacraments and services of the Christian church, that's a different story. When someone is longing for a place to belong, the group that reaches out to them, regardless of true intentions, will gain their loyalty. One article I found frames this in an easy to understand way and provides useful examples. I will do my own research in this time frame into their examples and provide more of the foundation of my own writing, but I do intend to provide some snippets that helped really solidify my understanding. The first of which being the explanation of the structure that makes religion a viable political tool. Under a secular democracy, definition of secular meaning denoting attitudes, activities, or other things that have no religious or spiritual basis. Power is lent to a ruler and can be revoked at the next election. But in a system where religion and politics are combined, power is viewed as being gifted by a higher authority. One is quote unquote chosen by God, and criticism stops being a disagreement and becomes heresy, and complex gray areas become a battle between good and evil, making it easier to sway the voting mass. Political goals become moral dilemmas, and trust is built in because they all belong to the same sacred community. It becomes that much easier to push social cohesion and therefore alienate any potential enemies within the proletariat because it becomes a sin to act differently. Hierarchy is already ingrained, and accountability isn't something that applies pressure anymore, leading to less personal growth. Failures aren't incompetence because they are tests of faith. The article goes on much longer, but the main basis is obedience above all. When the church pushes hierarchy, it builds the foundation for political profits to then solidify the ruling class that much easier. Contra Codius 2025. I probably said the author's name incorrectly. Historically, one of the examples provided is the Mandate of Heaven, originating in the Zhou dynasty. Probably said that wrong as well, I apologize. Circa 1046 to 256 before Common Era, China justified by divine right the governance and overthrow of rulers considered unworthy. When a ruler was overthrown, it meant the ruler and his dynasty were unworthy and no longer under the mandate. Similarly, natural disasters like floods and famines were seen as divine retribution and showing heaven's displeasure. As such, there were revolts following disaster. This was more of a way that philosophers and scholars would invoke to maintain checks and balances. Wikipedia Contributors 2019. While it shows how religion and politics are intertwined, I don't think it shows the entire extent of religion as a political tool. Another one that probably comes to mind for most people envisioning religious governance is ancient Egypt, when pharaohs were seen as god kings. Pharaohs were intermediaries between the gods and the people. Their authority extended across religious, political, and military domains. During life, pharaohs were considered incarnations of Horus, Osiris after death, and their crowns, scepters, and regalia would emphasize their sacred powers. The concept of god kings influenced later ideas of divine rulership. The Archaeologist 2025. This one is a much better example because we see obedience become a moral duty and showing up to temples becomes an economic power center. The idea is that religion stabilizes the state when aligned with royal authority, but the truth is that a lot of the struggle becomes completely brushed over. People become dazzled with the glamorization and start to ignore the problems that arise and not being able to question authority deigned similar soffit by a god. When authority is framed as divine, resistance is no longer just illegal, it becomes immoral, sinful, and dangerous. That's a quote from Constructodius 2025. The next example provided from the use of religion as a tool for political control was the change to theocracy, definition, a system of governance in which rule is in the name of God, divine guidance. Merged religion and law in Iran. Pahlavi secularism to Islamic Republic. Forgive me if I say any of these words wrong. In 1979, Sharia law became the foundation of Iran's legal and political order and governance, the main tenets of which are daily prayers, almsgiving, fasting, and pilgrimage. I even talked about this in a matriarchate/matrilineal society that follows those tenets in the writing. It is no longer the age of the dying god. Sharia law is concerned with ethical standards as well as legal rules. It isn't just about what is bound to do by law, but what one should do or refrain from doing. However, there are no legal sanctions of punishment or reward and makes it not simply a system of laws, but a code of behavior that is maintained in both private and public activity. Britannica 2024. Obviously, like with any religion, there are extremist groups or sects that that take disobedience to be not just a denial of religion, but of the very fabric of being. In fact, I intend to talk about one of those groups, but all things aside, Sharia law isn't this big boogie monster that some people try to depict it as. Currently, the first piece of information I found on this was a critical analysis of the speeches of Trump, Imran Khan, and Namrati Modi. I probably said their names wrong, to explain the use of religion as a political tool. These leaders were able to appeal to the masses and influence public opinion through aligning themselves religiously, creating a sense of affiliation, definition of affiliated, officially attached or connected to an organization, and bonding. Irshad et al., 2021. The theme is common. The discourse of religion is used to get votes and achieve political goals, or in many terms, the bourgeoisie's goals. Outside of that, religion is constantly used to divide the working class and create further discourse aiding the diversion from more pressing class issues. The truth is, if Christians for Trump were following Jesus' teachings, they wouldn't be able to align with both. One article picks apart Trump's connection to Christianity through describing his alignment with the seven deadly sins and against the Ten Commandments. Day 2024. Another article breaks it down more closely by what I was speaking on. Do the actions of this person reflect the teachings of Jesus? This author specifically states that followers of Christ are called to look beyond party loyalty, referencing Matthew 7, verse 16, by their fruits you will recognize them. Goodness and righteousness are reflected in behavior, and a person's character is not solely determined through words or appearances. The author mentions St. John's Church, where Trump used a Bible as a photo op and forcibly removed peaceful protesters with tear gas. The families harmed by his immigration policies, the hateful voices he aligned with, and his lack of humility and repentance. Christ's followers should not turn a blind eye to constant injustice simply because a leader claims to be on their side. McEwen, 2025. Yes, the world is scary, and I am confident that there are places where Christians face persecution, just like any religious sect. Choosing to focus on where we are different instead of where we want to align in goodness and righteousness is always going to create a divide where the ruling class can sneak in and keep sovereignty just out of reach. Instrucodica's article also mentions how modern nationalism uses civil religion through symbols and language to sanctify, definition, make legitimate, or binding by religious sanction the state. Further explanation is provided in knowing that civil religion is a term coined by Jean-Jacques Rousseau in The Social Contract, in which he argued that it serves as a moral foundation in a society and promotes social cohesion. Wikipedia Contributors 2020. Moving forward, how do Christian nationalists use faith as a weapon? On January 6th, signs with Jesus Saves and wooden crosses were seen among many pro-Trump banners. Insurrectionists stormed the U.S. Capitol with a deep-seated undercurrent of religion and outrage contributing to perpetuated definition makes something typically an undesirable situation or an unfounded belief continue indefinitely violence. One Texas business owner and former mayoral candidate stated in a live stream after the event, "To me, God and country are tied." And this can tie into a much larger issue of the freedom of religion. Editors of the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism 2025. That's not me saying that she is an extremist. That is not me saying that the belief that God and patriotism are aligned is inherently wrong, but that it can become flawed. It is do what thou will as long as we are doing what is morally right and does not influence another person's ability to do their will. Will in the terms of your most authentic purpose in life. You find much more freedom in expression. There's much more case study to be done on Christian nationalists that I know, but I will admit I'm not knowledgeable on that front. A really good creator for understanding and deconstructing those items is Monte Mater. She does Bible study on Wednesdays, not weekly, not every week. As well, you can be a Christ follower without believing that constricting things that many modern sects push. Monty also suggests a lot of good readings that help understand how the use of the Bible developed into what it is today. There is good and bad in everything, and one of the books she suggested was Separation of Church and Hate by John Fugelsang, which was an incredibly insightful read. She constantly suggests listening to Dan McClellan and reading his book, The Bible Says So, because he is a biblical scholar with several degrees. I'm getting off track here, but basically, if you want to do more research into nationalism, you are more than welcome to, and those are some good places to get started. Freedom of religion also means freedom from religion. It isn't inherently a bad thing for your faith and patriotism to be rooted in this concept of becoming better to be one with God. I can see the aspects of that which are beneficial, such as creating a stronger sense of a moral compass and leading to more socialist policy to feed the hungry and house foreigners by following Jesus' teachings. When it becomes a point of contention, definition, heated disagreement, is what I find much more concerning. I don't know how to properly explain that making things more accessible and more diverse isn't going to harm the people that fit into the majority. I'll try to explain. Imagine a world where no religious deviation, definition, the action of departing from an established course or accepted standard is allowed. What would happen if the guy put in charge of the church was the one who determined the exact guidelines we abide by? No longer is questioning your faith seen as a matter of strengthening your senses and your goals, but an abject failure worthy of the most divine punishment. But if we accept and appreciate the freedom of, which includes the freedom from religion, we realize that our beliefs don't have to align with anyone except our own. Religion as ritual in coping with existence. The first thing we have to address here is exactly what ritual is. By definition, ritual is a religious and solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a prescribed order. That is a complex way of saying it is a repeated action or ceremony. Braiding sweetgrass put it best with ceremony focuses attention so that attention becomes intention. Kimmerer 2013, page 249. Brushing your teeth is a ritual. When you zone out, you forget the main aspect of your attention, and the attention cannot find its intention, which is taking care of your body. When you cannot find the intention, the reason why, then everything loses meaning. So, yes, religion as a form of ritual is an incredible tool for betterment and getting around people you care for, contributing to your community through providing a space that will house the houseless, feed the hungry, and welcome the stranger is a very powerful thing. In the wrong hands, the intention is lost and it does become simply a tool for control. But I do not think that that means the concept of religion in its entirety is flawed when it's gotten so many through cold, lonely nights. Further, religion is a strong coping mechanism for many people. When facing uncertainties like death, suffering, and trauma, we want to question why. For some people, that means understanding the cycle scientifically, emotionally, or spiritually. For others, it means trying to understand it by explaining it away. Believing in the afterlife helps some people get through the day, and I think that that's absolutely within their right to do so. Not every single story in the Bible is meant to be taken literally, a lot of them are allegorical. Definition of allegory: a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. Sometimes these stories can set up our foundation and provide a baseline understanding of empathy, morals, integrity, accountability, and so much more. Whatever religion, if they are choosing to get better, I do not care what form or ritual they use in doing so. In summary, religion can be and has been used as a political tool. I do also recognize I have stated contradictory information regarding my beliefs on the concept of good and bad, but you understand the point I'm making, I presume, if you've made it this far. Anyway, thank you for reading. If you're a fan of investigative journalism and philosophy, subscribe for free today. If you would like to further support my efforts, you can subscribe to my Patreon, which will be linked below. Only occasional posts are for purchase. Everything else is free and comes 2 days earlier, which also helps me cover research materials, i.e., purchasing texts, as well as my time and effort in development. Along with that, it supports my real life effort in making education free and widespread. I thank you greatly for your support no matter what form. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!